What if I were to tell you that you could burn every manuscript in existence, that you could destroy every Bible in existence?
I'd say that sounds logistically problematic and way too Fahrenheit 451 for my liking.
And you could still show basically almost everything the New Testament says about Jesus by other means.
You don't mean charades, do you, Frank?
Well, you can do that, and in fact, you can do it in an overwhelming fashion, in my opinion, by looking at my friend J. Warner Wallace's brand new book about to come out called Person of Interest.
Oh, great. The Cold Case Detective has yet another crime-themed apologetics book hitting the market. Not interested.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you think more people saw Avatar or the Titanic or any Star Wars film or anything like that, no, they're not the top films. What's the top film of all time in terms of people seeing it, Jim?
The Jesus movie.
Wait, you're going to pit Jesus against Star Wars? That's how it's going to be. Now you've done it. Bring it, detective. Welcome to Paulogia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians. Despite J. Warner Wallace's recent disparaging remarks about Christian YouTube channels who interview people,
very few channels on YouTube, at least the apologetics channels that I'm watching, are driven by the content of the host alone. Far more are derivative. What I mean is, they are interviewing somebody. They're dependent upon the existence of the people they are consistently interviewing.
He has a book coming out in a few weeks, so naturally, to promote it, he needs to visit all the Christian YouTube channels who interview people.
And isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Now, I haven't read his new Person of Interest book. It comes out a few weeks after the time of this recording, so it might be fair to say that my critiques today are premature. But I've listened to at least a half dozen videos and podcasts of the author pitching his case at length, so that's what I'm responding to. The premise of the new book is simple.
Imagine a scenario in which every New Testament has been destroyed. What would you know about Jesus?
To which my first reaction was, that wouldn't actually prove anything about the veracity of the claims about Jesus. Just the popularity of referencing the Bible, a point Sean McDowell made in his interview.
You're not necessarily saying this makes Christianity true, if I understand you correctly. You're saying if God did step into history, this is the kind of fallout we would expect.
One thing I like about Sean is his self-awareness of some of the weaknesses of some Christian arguments. Fortunately for Jim, he was also interviewed by apologist hype man Frank Turek, who doesn't mind being hyperbolic about any point that agrees with his conclusion.
Proving Jesus without the Bible. How can that be done, ladies and gentlemen? Well, my friend J. Warner Wallace has done it.
J. Warner Wallace has proven Jesus without the Bible, everyone. Time for me to pack up the channel. But Frank's overstatement aside, Jim does in fact seem to be on board with this high view of his own work. True to his shtick, he attempts to tie this to a criminal case where most of the desired evidence was missing.
We'll investigate a real homicide together, and we'll also examine the unparalleled impact Jesus had on human history. We'll trace the fuse that burned toward the disappearance of Tammy Hayes, then sift through the fallout that eventually implicated her husband. In a similar way, we'll examine the historical fuse that burned toward the appearance of Jesus and marvel at the fallout and unexpected impact Jesus had on our world.
I've had cases where I can't answer the question, how did he kill her? Exactly when did he kill her? How did he get rid of her body? How did he move her car? I can't answer any of those questions for a jury, but I still end up with convictions because I can demonstrate that the fuse and the fallout identified the felon. Well, could we do the same thing with Jesus? If we didn't have a New Testament crime scene evidence, if all we had was the fuse of history and the fallout of history, could we make a case for the Jesus of history? And that's what we try to do in Person of Interest.
Given the author's repetition of this verbiage in his interviews, the book is clearly structured around this fuse fallout motif.
So we're looking at the fuse of history that burns up to the appearance of Jesus. I think there are three strands to that fuse, and those strands are the cultural fuse, and the spiritual fuse, and the prophetic fuse.
Cultural, spiritual, and prophetic. Gotcha.
Now, the cultural fuse really talks about what is happening in the governments and empires that existed prior to Jesus, leading up to the appearance of Jesus. Now, you will see that it's only under the Roman Empire that we have the establishment of sufficient roads. All of those roads that Paul used to communicate the truth about Jesus to the world around him were only possible after the Roman Empire.
Isn't it true of any time in history that the tools available were better than the tools prior? Why not wait until pervasive literacy, so that more people could record Jesus' deeds as they happened? Or wait until the printing press? Or wait until photography? Pictures of the miracles would surely be even more convincing. Or wait until the invention of movies. Why not wait until the internet, the ultimate communication tool so far? Jesus could live stream the feeding of the 5,000 to billions of people at once. Or is the argument that God wanted the earliest acceptable time so as to save more generations? If you're God, what would prevent you from using the lesser roads of 100 BC? Or why not have Jesus come just before the Tower of Babel, so that his message would have spread from there everywhere in the world? This is entirely post hoc rationalization. There's no moment in human history without communication advancements.
The reason why Christianity spread at the pace that it spread is largely due to the fact that it happened in the first century during the Roman Empire.
Oh, wait, that is quite an admission. Jim is saying that the spread has less to do with truth value than opportunity. Almost as if whatever message was most popular at the time was poised to spread. No divine intervention necessary. And that's the crux of Jim's book. Christianity was popular. So popular that God must have had a hand, right? But this is silly, because there's always a most popular thing. This speaks little to the quality of the thing or the truth of the thing. I mean, the formal logical fallacy, argumentum ad populum, or argument from popularity fallacy, should be enough to toss this book in the garbage before it arrives. But to drive home that God need not be involved in popular things, I'm going to contrast Jim's points with Star Wars, a popular thing near and dear to my heart. So, what's this spiritual fuse?
So I read through all of the mythologies that people typically say, well, look, that's similar to Jesus. Well, yeah, broadly, there are broad similarities. I found 15 broad similarities between all ancient mythologies, all of them. Now, not everyone's got all 15. Usually it's like maybe the most is 9 or 10. The least is maybe 6. So somewhere between 6 and 10 of these 15 broad similarities are possessed by every ancient mythology. I don't care which one you're referring to.
Why am I imagining Jim putting together one of those product comparison checkmark grids so that we can look for the most feature-rich religion? Of course, when you see these in ads, it's always the company paying who handpicks the list of criteria that is most favorable. As Jim is the one who came up with these 15 similarities, as opposed to referencing the work of comparative religion scholars, for example, you will not be surprised to learn that
Jesus appears. When he appears, he's the only one who possesses all 15 of all of the expectations of ancient humans.
As defined by Jim, of course. No surprise that he didn't include any commonalities in mythologies that he couldn't also apply to Jesus. What about promiscuity? It seems like a lot of ancients expected their gods to have sexual prowess. I guess I'll have to wait for the book to come out to see if that's in there. Now, in the mid-20th century, a comparative mythology professor named Joseph Campbell did an expansive study of archetypal heroes and myths, coming up with a blueprint for the monomyth, the ultimate story to resonate with the world. Now, a young George Lucas happened to subscribe to Campbell's ideas, and it's no surprise that Star Wars checks off every box in the Joseph Campbell monomyth checklist. This was not a coincidence. Lucas planned it that way. If there's a formula to resonating stories, and Jim seems to admit there's a formula for deities, why should we not simply acknowledge that Christianity did a good job of cashing in on the formula?
Do you really think that the people who wrote the Jesus story, the eyewitnesses of Jesus, knew the depths of Egyptian mythology? Do you really think they knew the depth of Persian mythology?
George Lucas has admitted to crafting his space saga to meet the formula. And many posit this kind of engineering in the story of Jesus as well. But we don't have to assume that Christianity checked boxes by formulaic design. We can simply recognize after the fact that this is an aspect of its resonance. In fact, we can look at this as kind of a mythological evolution. The stories that people respond to best are repeated the most, and variations in the telling are naturally selected for further repetition.
No, it's just that Jesus meets the expectations of all of us most robustly because he is the God who inspired those expectations in the first place.
So you're telling me that God couldn't share the true religion with the world until he first inspired enough false religions? But that those who believed the false religions he inspired would be doomed to hell? That's a whole new problem of evil that I'd never considered. Wow. And the third chord of the fuse? Prophecy?
Yeah, I was never impressed with prophecy. I know that sounds terrible as a Christian, right?
On this we agree. Even as a Christian, I cringed at most of the prophecy claims I heard.
He would cite something in the Old Testament, and I would read it, and I would say, I'm not sure that's even about the Messiah, let alone Jesus. I mean, it seems like this is David talking about David.
Right.
So sometimes in a crime scene, you'll have something that will point to the suspect immediately, given the technology we have. So, for example, if I had your fingerprint at a crime scene, well, I can identify right away. That's the guy I'm looking for because his fingerprint is in the crime scene. So those are clear pieces of evidence that point to a suspect before I ever physically encounter him or meet him. In the same murder scene, I might have like a button. Or like a button's a good example because I don't always know when a torn button, is laying in the crime scene. I can see the victim doesn't have a button missing, but maybe it came off a different shirt from the victim. How do I know that button is from our suspect? It might be, but I really won't know until I knock on the door of the suspect and do a search warrant and go through all of his shirts and see if any of his shirts are missing a button. If they are missing the same kind of button, well, that's a piece of cloaked evidence that didn't point to my suspect from the onset, but in hindsight, it will point to my suspect, and it'll confirm the guy who maybe the fingerprint identified. So that'll be used in trial. So I have clear evidence and cloaked evidence in any crime scene. I think that prophecies are kind of the same way.
Okay, that's an interesting way to think about it. Unlike a button that will match a specific shirt, we're talking about a huge confirmation bias if we're going to retrofit an individual into random sentences of the massive Old Testament. Particularly if you give up any requirement that the passage need to have been intended as a prophecy. And that's just finding patterns. Humans are really good at finding patterns, even in unconnected chaos. Look at all the people in history whom Christians have suspected may be the Antichrist, pulling up all manner of biblical proof texts. Sometimes things are just commonalities and coincidences, and reading too much into a situation.
Just for sake of argument now, let's throw out all the cloaked prophecies. Get rid of them.
Already done.
Okay, I don't trust anything that the New Testament authors.
Already done.
Not only that, let's go ahead and toss out any prophecy made by anyone other than somebody who also predicted something historical that came true. In other words, a reliable prophet.
Okay, but now you're down to 0 prophets.
Well, now you're down to like 4 prophets.
Wow. Our scorecards are pretty different on this one. I guess I'll have to wait for your book to see who the 4 are, but I'm unaware of any. I actually have a pretty rigid set of criteria for what I would consider as prophecy. I've discussed it on other channels, but maybe not here yet. Number 1, made clearly and demonstrably prior to the events predicted. Number 2, intended to be a prediction. Number 3, a non-mundane claim. Number 4, answerable only by a single, clear, verifiable occurrence. Number 5, not open to interpretation. And number 6, not something people are actively attempting to fulfill.
You're stuck with Jesus. And the prophecies from the Old Testament about Jesus are still strong, even if I was willing to toss out like 2/3 of them.
Well, here's the problem with these clear messianic prophecies in Jesus, if any such can be granted. How do we know that Jesus actually fulfilled them? The gospel writers were clearly aware of them because they explicitly connect the dots. But until I can have some confirmation that the dots were actually connected, rather than mere legends that arose to make them connected, well, then I'm going to continue to be unimpressed by prophecy. This is no different than being impressed that in Star Wars Episode 3, Obi-Wan picked up Anakin's lightsaber, foreshadowing giving that saber to Luke in Episode 4. That's not a prophecy. Those were stories written in different decades to connect dots that weren't there before.
You end up with a small area of overlap in which all 3 of these strands are overlapping. And if you see it visually in the book, you go, wow.
You go, wow. Is this basically a look at the trees argument? Every event in history is dependent on timing and circumstances. No event in history happened at a time it couldn't happen, or under circumstances that wouldn't allow it. It's nothing special here. Jim is asking you to give special awe where none is warranted. Well, Jim thinks that a system of roads, commonalities in mythology, and post hoc prophetical interpretation weave together to make a Jesus fuse. What's the fallout?
I think there are 6 areas of culture that not only were forever changed by Jesus, but bear his fingerprints. And so from those fingerprints, you can reconstruct the story of Jesus. Literature, visual arts, music, education, science, and spirituality. Those are the 6.
Again, his bewildering endgame is to reconstruct the story of Jesus. But before we get to that, we'll let Jim demonstrate that he doesn't understand the notion that correlation is not causation.
Because it turned out that those 6 things, or 5 of those 6 things, literature, music, visual arts, education, and science, were the things that I most revered as an atheist, having no idea that we wouldn't be anywhere we are today in those 5 areas, if not for Jesus and his followers.
That's a huge claim to make, that if Christianity had fizzled out in the first century, humanity would have just sat around for 2,000 years, making literally no progress. No one would have written a book. No one would have sung a song. No one would have painted a painting. No one would have observed nature. And none of those activities ever happened before Jesus arrived. And no non-Christian cultures ever danced, or drew, or learned anything. That's the claim on the table. I understand some hyperbole in Jim's sales pitch here, but this whole line of thinking drives me crazy. We've had a good 1,500 years of most Westerners, and particularly the most privileged ones, at least professing Christianity. So to point to this least distinguishing feature as a cause is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I get it. In the scientific revolution in Europe, people were all Christians, but it didn't have to happen there. There were more people everywhere else on the planet than there were in that tiny spot called Europe. Okay, it happened in Europe under Christendom for a reason. The worldview that was being represented by that population was a Christian worldview, and it ignites the sciences in a way that other worldviews don't.
Regardless of religion, virtually all the names one would rattle off as scientific pioneers were men. Maybe we should speculate that there's something about the penis that ignites the sciences in a way that vaginas don't. Here's a claim for you. I bet that nearly every scientist around the world with a published paper in the last 30 years has seen a Star Wars film. Probably even consider themselves a Star Wars fan, and at a higher rate than the general population. As long as we're just extrapolating from correlation, I should say that we owe genetic mapping in cell phones to Star Wars. If not for Star Wars, we wouldn't have discovered the Higgs boson particle. Same argument.
There are 6 times more Christians involved in the sciences as Nobel laureate winners than there are atheists and agnostics combined.
Over the last 120 years, that's not actually that impressive, considering that openly affirming non-belief is a new trend. But let's actually look at the Jewish scientists. They have 20% of the Nobel laureate wins, with only 0.2% of the population. That's an impressive worldview representation. Of course, Christians like to appropriate Jewish worldview, but since Jim's case is specifically that Jesus is the reason for all the science, he can't do that here.
So yeah, I get it. You can say, but look, if you're doing science anywhere, in Asia, if you're doing science in Persia, if you're doing science anywhere in the world, anywhere, it turns out you're still indebted to the fathers of science who came out of a Christian worldview.
Which would prove what exactly? Those Christian fathers of science are subsequently indebted to earlier fathers of science who came from ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, China, and Greece, and particularly the Muslims.
You know, Islam was also active in the sciences up until about the early Middle Ages. And so people have speculated as to why their leadership in areas like cosmology, mathematics, medicine, they were very active in those 3 areas, for example. And yet it seems to have come to a close at some point in history. And a lot of that has, what people surmise by studying this, was really related to the impact of Islamic theologians.
And this is a tangent, but this seems to be where a lot of Christianity, at least the evangelical branch, is heading, toward a very anti-science mindset, and wearing this science rejection like a badge of faith in the name of theology.
You'll see, if you are a big fan of music today and you made a list of the top 150 artists in pop music, rock, rap, country, whatever it is, they are available right now on Billboard magazine. I made a list of all of those. There's about 150 artists. All but 2 have sung a song about Jesus. Not necessarily a nice song. Sometimes it's pejorative. But the point is, you cannot say that about any other historical figure or any other God, deity, or religious leader. Only one person draws that kind of attention.
To get on the Billboard Top 150, you have to be popular, which means singing about things your audience wants to hear. And that chart is for the Western world, where most people are Christian or of Christian heritage. Putting out a Christmas album is like a license to print money in North America, so every artist does it.
Well, that's Western music. Oh, really? Not necessarily. It turns out that Western music has had a global impact. If you listen to what's known as K-pop, Korean pop music, pretty cool actually. But it kind of feels like boy bands, from the 90s. But the point is, if you listen to that, they're emulating the genre of music that Jesus followers or people who sung about Jesus, whether they were followers or not.
There are no K-pop gospel singers. Okay, well, I looked it up, and apparently there are some, but it's unusual. By now you'll recognize the silly notion that the buck of innovation stops at Christians. No. If K-pop is emulating Jesus followers, then Jesus followers were emulating all the cultures performing before them. You know that archaeologists have found evidence of Neanderthal music, right, Jim? Maybe it'll be more robust in the book, but in his interviews, Jim makes the same self-important correlation, not causation claims about these other areas too. Visual arts, education, and literature. I'm not going to deny that Jesus has been a popular muse in these areas, but to claim that no other muse could have achieved the same is first, unknowable, and second, ridiculous to me. If Leonardo da Vinci had never met Mona Lisa, I still think his career would have been fine. He'd have painted somebody else. There's much more to say, but I want to get to the heart of the matter. This hypothetical that the story of Jesus can be recreated from the materials produced in visual arts, education, literature, science, music, and other religions. If Jim's entire point is merely that Christianity became a pervasive meme, then we can agree and go home. But Jim thinks that certain levels of popularity somehow cannot be achieved without truth and divine intervention. And so here is where I will demonstrate the vapidity of this thought by showing how it equally applies to the most influential cultural impact in my lifetime, Star Wars.
And it turns out, if you just looked at the paintings and wall murals of the first 300, 400, 500 years, you can, so I went through, like, for example, the Gospel of Mark. I went through those and I just made a list of the 50 some odd episodes that are in the Gospel of Mark. And I started to search to see. And it turns out that every single one of those episodes has been depicted in ancient art forms. So in other words, if you wanted to get rid of the Gospel of Mark, you'd have to do more than get rid of just the text of Mark. You'd have to destroy the 50 locations where there are still ancient depictions of these episodes in the Gospel of Mark.
Did you know that every single scene from Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope has been depicted by artists, including this collected depiction of the entire story beat by beat that traces back to that very first year, 1977? That's even before it was called Episode 4 A New Hope. If you wanted to get rid of Star Wars, you'd have to get rid of more than the movies. You'd have to get rid of thousands of ancient depictions.
You can reconstruct the story of Jesus and the rich theology of the Christian worldview if all you had was the music of the first 4 centuries. That, to me, is a huge impact, and it helps us to establish, again, you could destroy the New Testament, but unless you're willing to also destroy the history of music, you will not erase Jesus.
If all you had were songs sung by Star Wars fans in that first 40 years, you can reconstruct the story of Luke Skywalker and his friends, not to mention thousands of shoutouts. Here are some of my favorites, in snippets hopefully short enough to not have the video taken down.
A long, long time ago, in a galaxy far away, her name was Leia, she was a princess. Y-O-D-A Yoda, yo-yo-yo-yo-Yoda.
I run, I can your backpack while you're running.
You could destroy the movie, but you'd also have to destroy the music.
I reassembled what could be known about Jesus from literature. What could in the first 3 centuries, I looked at every voice that is available out there in ancient history in the first 3 centuries of the Common Era. You can reconstruct the story of Jesus from those pretty powerfully. From the church fathers, the ancient non-Christians, the non-canonical authors, you can reconstruct the story of Jesus.
Again, I could point to thousands of licensed Star Wars books, or probably even limit myself to Star Wars references in non-licensed books, or even to the surprisingly robust genre presenting Star Wars in light of Christianity. But since you said we're looking at every voice, let me send you to the world of Star Wars fan fiction for things you'll never be able to unread. All of this in the first 40 years.
If you're interested in spiritual things, you ought to start with Jesus, because it turns out you could reconstruct the story of Jesus just from the way that non-Christian religions describe him.
Recreate your religion from other religions? All right, J. Warner Wallace. I have no idea to what extent you're going to show your work on all these recreation of the Jesus story claims, but I decided that I had to put the rest of my life on hold in order to put my money where my mouth is. I had to see if I could recreate Star Wars purely from non-Lucasfilm movies and TV shows. Unfortunately, here at Paulogia, we don't have cold case Christianity money for hired help.
So I did hire 2 research assistants and said, hey, here's what we're looking for.
Or to dedicate the better part of a year.
We spent probably 9 months sitting in front of a fire or in my study researching this book.
And I apologize for taking your time here, but sometimes a man has to bring the receipts. If you want to skip the show, you can use the YouTube feature to skip to the next chapter or jump ahead to the timestamp on screen. Otherwise, grab some popcorn, and I'll see you on the other side. I call this Show Me Star Wars without showing me Star Wars.
Get him!
A long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
Star Wars! Nothing but Star Wars! Let's begin with part 4.
It was a time of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base.
Emperor Zurg has been secretly building a weapon with the destructive capacity to annihilate an entire planet. I alone have information that reveals this weapon's only weakness.
We're doomed.
R2?
There's one. Set for stun.
Hold your fire. There's no life forms aboard.
Well, well, Princess Leia. Are you prepared to tell me what you've done with the stolen Death Star plans?
I'll never tell.
They are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take them away.
Not that way, R2. You'll be breaking down in no time.
The side of the one that they call real.
Are we being too literal?
No, you fool. We're following orders. We were told to comb the desert, so we're combing it.
Someone was in the pod. The tracks go off in this direction. Look, sir. Droids.
Like an angry wolf.
Thanks for bringing me with. There's booze here somewhere. I just know it.
Luke! Luke! Luke!
What?
Do you speak Bocce?
Of course I do, sir. It's like a second language to me. I'm as fluent in Bocce.
All right, shut up.
I'll take this one.
Tashi Station is proud to present the Power Converter!
Oh, this oil bath is gonna feel so good.
Hey, there's something stuck in this R2 unit.
Help
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
What's this?
Whoever she is, she sounds like she's in trouble. Is there any more to this message?
Help me, Chuck Bartowski. You're my only hope.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
She said Obi-Wan Kenobi. I wonder if she means old Obi-Wan Kenobi.
We need you back on the farm, Britt. Just for one more season.
But that's a whole nother year away.
Listen to your uncle, Britt.
Where are you going?
Seems like I'm going nowhere.
You're too much like your old man.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
R2! He took off in the middle of the night. We gotta find him!
R2, what are you doing out here?
Beep, boop, beep.
Well, I see some bantha tracks, but I don't see any. Wait a minute, there's sand people, all right. I can see one of them now.
This guy, he's like Alec Guinness, so good. Star Wars.
The Sand People frighten easily, but they'll be back, and in greater numbers.
I have something here for you. Your father's lightsaber. Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough, but your uncle wouldn't allow it.
The lightsaber and the vwing, vwing, vwing.
An elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
General Kenobi, many years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars. We need your help again.
This mini-fridge contains the plans to the megastar. Girth plots his ultimate weapon of destruction.
What I like to call a Death Star.
She needs your help.
Why do you want to join a force?
Who are they? It's not a they. It's the force that binds the universe together.
There's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, I can fly you guys down to Anchorage if you want. You guys can get rides from there to wherever.
Any attack made by the rebels against this station would be a useless gesture, no matter what technical data they've obtained. This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
What are you doing? What is that? What is this? What does it mean? You've lost me.
Huh? Release him!
As you wish. I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Uncle Owen? Aunt Peru? Oh my God!
Make her tell us the location of the rebel base.
Uncle Owen and Aunt Peru, they're dead.
There's nothing you could have done, Luke. Had you been there, you would have been killed too, and the droids would now be in the hands of the Empire.
The studio of Mos Eisley.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
First, I'll need to see your faculty identification card.
You don't need to see my faculty identification card.
I don't need your faculty identification card.
These are not the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
Move along.
Move along.
How'd you make him do that? Force can sometimes have great power on the weak-minded.
We don't serve their kind.
So long, sweethearts.
He doesn't like you. I'm
sorry.
I don't like you either. You better watch yourself. We're wanted men. I have the death sentence on 12 systems.
I'll be careful.
You'll be dead.
Chewie, hi. Luke Skywalker. How are you?
I'm Han Solo, captain of the Millennium Falcon.
He's remembered as the guy who made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs.
I can pay you.
Pay?
All I'm asking is to tag along.
Chewie, take these guys to the ship and get her ready.
This is Greedo.
Sorry about the mess.
May not look like much, but trust me.
She's got it where it counts.
We can outrun most anything in the Traveler's fleet.
Stop that ship! Blast them!
Quick, to the bicentennial lemon. We're getting free. Jabulu, get us out of here.
Where's the rebel base? Talk!
I grow tired of asking this, so it will be the last time. Where is the rebel base?
Dantooine.
I feel a great disturbance in the food chain, as if 1,000 sandwiches cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
But with a blast shield down, I can't even see! How am I supposed to fight? What?
You've just taken your first step into a larger world.
Take her out of hyperactive.
Taking her out of hyperactive.
What the hell? Oh my God, we came out of hyperspace into an asteroid field.
That's no moon! It's a space station!
Hey down there, can you give us a hand with this?
TK421. It's not gonna sound like this without the TK421.
Observe, Pinkio. She gave us the plans to Girth Plotz's ultimate weapon.
I found her.
She's here. The princess.
The princess.
She's rich.
Sorry. I can't see a thing in this helmet.
Where are you taking this thing?
Prisoner transfer from CB11, Section 38.
Listen, I got Alex here. She's got Austin and Ford with her.
Don't get mad at me, just because you were dumb enough to fall for the old Wookiee prisoner gag.
We had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
We're sending a squad up.
A negative. We had a reactor leak here now. Give us a minute to lock it down. Large leak, very dangerous.
There's no reactor on that floor.
Bringing in the big gun.
Boring conversation anyway.
Nobody knows.
I'm here to rescue you. Hi.
Is she a little short for a stormtrooper?
Thoughts?
Through there! Go!
What a wonderful smell I've discovered.
I have a bad feeling about this.
You guys don't think that the,
Don't be ridiculous, okay? The walls are not gonna close in on us.
Fortify the walls with this! Do it! 3PO! Shut down all the garbage masters on the detention level! Do you copy? Shut down all the garbage masters on the detention level!
Shut them all down. Hurry.
All right! Woohoo! 3PO! We're all right!
What?
Nothing.
Princess Leia's anti-jiggle breast tape.
I won't hesitate, gotta jump and do endorse the guy, the delegate.
No date is worth this!
Hey, did you hear something?
Stormtroopers don't know anything about lasers or time travel. They're blue-collar workers.
There she is.
You came here in that?
See, everyone in the Star Wars universe shoots at each other with things we collectively refer to as laser blasters, even though the characters only call them blasters.
They're coming.
Very satisfying.
So, we meet again, Buzz Lightyear, for the last time.
When I left you, I was but a nerd. Now, I am the master.
Only the master of evil, Sodom!
Power of our week, old man. You should not have come.
If you strike me down, I shall become
more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
It makes that nice noise when it goes down.
Run, Blue, run.
Let's hope the old man is right. But this is going to be a short ride.
Luke, what's wrong? I just can't believe Ben's gone.
Come on, kid, we're not out of the woods yet. Here they come.
Oh, yeah! Don't get cocky, kid!
feel like Princess Leia when the Millennium Falcon escaped the Death Star. It's too easy.
What do you mean, too easy?
The exhaust shaft is only 2 meters wide, so you'll have to use proton torpedoes.
Well, that's impossible, even for a computer.
It's not impossible. I used to climb over my neighbor's fence when I was a kid. It was about 2 meters.
And let me say, may the Force be with you.
Well, kid, I guess this is goodbye.
So you got your reward and you're leaving, is that it?
Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Guess that's what you're best at, isn't it?
May the Force be with you, man.
Grade leader, checking in. Grade 2, checking in.
Grade 3, checking in.
Grade 5.
Look at the size of that thing.
Got a problem here. Hold on!
Trust your feelings.
Heads up, gang! Here they come! Careful, Red Fox! There's one right on your tail! I'm hit! I can't hold him! Ready my bike!
It's a second-rate raider! We're going in! Follow me! The water cannons, they've stopped! Well, that's much better!
Stay on target!
Stay on target.
Some of the science nerds have analyzed the grade schoolers' attack, and we might, have a problem?
I think you overestimate their chances.
Almost there.
Stay on target.
I'm coming, Elizabeth!
Almost there. Got it. It's away! Negative. Didn't go in. It just impacted on the surface.
I'm going in. Cover me, Porkins! No problem. This'll be just like riding the streets of San Francisco when I was 5. I'm on the leader.
Hey, Luke Skywalker. Use the Force.
The Force is strong in that one.
You've turned off your targeting computer. Something wrong?
The Death Star is getting closer.
I have you now.
What the deuce?
She's all yours, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
Remember, the Four will be with you, always.
Fortunately, Lord Vader escaped without harm.
If you enjoyed that and would like to watch it again, or share it with friends who don't care about discussion on Christianity, I've put up a copy of just the recreated movie over on my other channel and put a link in the description. This is probably the most work I've ever put into a video edit, and that includes when I actually worked at Lucasfilm. So I'd love it if you'd pass it around to your favorite Star Wars fan, if only to brighten their day. But in the end, what was the point of that? That anything popular enough will be referenced a lot by other people. Few things get to the level of full recreation, but others do. And that doesn't mean the story is divine, or even true. For once, even Frank Turek understands.
You know, Jim, the one thing that I think a skeptic might try and rebut regarding this, or at least say this could undermine your entire argument. Yeah, okay, I could see how Jesus could have this impact on the culture in the fallout and all this fuse stuff leading up to it. What would you say to somebody who said, look, it's all based on a hoax, right? Look, either he rose from the dead or he didn't. The question is, how could this all happen if he didn't rise from the dead? Is it possible that a group of early followers of Jesus invented this and that just led to the explosion that we see? It wasn't a real explosion, it was an artificial explosion, and that led to the fallout. I mean, how do you rebut somebody who says, yeah, but it's all based on a lie to begin with?
Right. And this artificial explosion wouldn't even have to have been a lie. It could be merely a legend that grew. And by the time the Gospels were written decades later, we have sincere believers spreading what they think is truth. People are mistaken all the time. You can recreate Star Wars from music, literature, visual arts, and even other movies.
But then why didn't this happen under Buddha? Why didn't it happen under Krishna? Why didn't it happen under Zoroaster? Why didn't it happen under all the other, which I think the most atheists would say, are also equally suspicious and fictitious stories about God?
There's nothing divine required to achieve popularity. It merely takes the right product at the right place at the right time. We see it over and over. Is the story of Jesus the most popular story of all time? Sure. But if it wasn't, something else would be. And that next most popular thing probably isn't true either.
So you're saying this one just got lucky?
Kinda, yeah. Right product, right place, right time, and some luck. If Detective Wallace happens to see this and would like to send me a copy of his book to see if it addresses my concerns based on the marketing campaign, I'd be happy to take a look, Jim. Otherwise, based on his previous work, my hopes aren't that high that he's proven Christianity, with or without the Gospels. If you'd like to see more of my thoughts on our friendly neighborhood cold case detective, see the Paulogia vs. J. Warner Wallace playlist on the screen now, and I'll see you over there. Later.